Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second session of today, day 3 of the Art of Armor, the Zoom conference to benefit History Live Northeast. I'm Matt Blazek, and with me now, I am really excited to introduce someone who I've been following through her Facebook and Instagram page for a while, and read one of her books recently, picked that up, and have been flipping through that for some pointers and helping with my own fighting and movement. So we have here HEMA instructor, trainer, harness fashion combatant, author, and overall scholar, and overall just wonderful person to follow. Jessica Finley, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me here, Matt. I'm super excited to chat.
From what I've seen, you seem to be super excited anytime you can talk about, fighting and armor and training and things like that. So
yeah. I mean, really, like, I've said this places, but for me, like, swords are joy, right? And then that extended to armor pretty quickly.
How did you get started in this world in doing all this?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I've told the story before, but it's still fun. I got started in '97 with swords generally. And that was at that time, my boyfriend was working with a guy who was like starting a sword group. And so my boyfriend came home and told me about it. And I was like, I'm going to that. That sounds amazing. And so I got myself an invitation and showed up to my first like sword practice literally in clogs, bell bottoms, and a cutoff shirt, right? Because I was 19 and I was excited about swords and I didn't know what I was doing. But I fell in love. And so what that group ended up being, which I didn't know when I showed up, all I knew was swords, was they were starting, and we were starting eventually because I signed up, a stage combatant group. So we would go around to Renaissance festivals and fight for fun. So that's how I got started. And kind of like our approach, I think it's worth saying, was in a way akin to what like WWE wrestling is, right? So it isn't real, obviously, right? But it wasn't entirely choreographed either. So we were always kind of searching for this way to like bridge that line between putting on a good show and displaying some swordsmanship, such as it was, white for our knowledge at the time, but also like exploring physicality and exploring, I would say now openings, right? Creating openings, provocations, invitations, like all that sort of stuff. So even though it was stage combat, right? Which you might think wouldn't be, some people might think wouldn't be preparation for fencing. It actually was in many ways. I took a lot of lessons out of it.
I actually had the exact same experience because I did the exact same thing. I was part of a Ren Fair stage combat group as well. We were called Chivalry Arms.
Okay.
I was Lord Alexander Clark, or I was Sir Alexander Clark, Lord of Kent, Clark of Kent.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's good. And you've got the glasses even.
I do. But you're right. You do learn movement and body placement and range, and it's especially when you're doing, because we did basically the same thing where we had a system that we followed.
Yeah.
But we all got so proficient at the system that we didn't have to choreograph. Like, we'd have to plan out every single move. We had certain beats we wanted to hit during it.
Yep.
But a lot of times we were just fighting, not fighting to actually hit or point, but we were just fighting each other, and we did learn a lot. You're right.
Yeah. Oh man, that was so much fun. So I did that for 10 years. But in the middle of that, because the way it was presented to me was like, this was very grounded in history stuff, right? But then like, you kind of figure out pretty fast, like, there's huge gaps in our knowledge about how grounded this is, right? And so I became very curious about like, what is historical fighting? Like, how can we start to incorporate that? And I got access to the internet in like 98, 99, right? And so then joined, at that time it was NetSword, and then there was Sword Forum, and there's all these, Armor Archive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all these places that I could get in and connect with other people and start actually learning. And I took my first Christian Tobler seminar in February of 2003 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that's like my official start date for HEMA, though I was doing swords for like 5-ish years before that. So yeah.
The Armor Archive is a common thread that has gone through a lot of us, a lot of the speakers and attendees here today. I think all of us started off on the Armor Archive at one point.
Yeah, yeah. And because we're talking about armor, like armor was never my jam. Like I wasn't super excited about armor. I wasn't intrigued by it, whatever. But I had, well, I had finagled myself a way into being Christian Tobler's personal student, right? Because I kind of asked him, like, are you willing to take me on as a long distance student? And then like, either I'll come to you or you'll come to me as often as I can pull off, which was about once a year in the early days, right? But will you take me on long distance and like help develop my training? And so he did take me on. So at one point he was like, so how's your harness training going? And I was like, I'm not into armor. And he was like, too bad. Like, it's a part of the art. You need to learn it. You need to get proficient at it. And I was like, okay. And then it turns out it's awesome and I love it. And I'm so,
for somebody who's not into armor, you probably have one of the most unique suits of armor in the fighting field right now. I mean, not many people are wearing that cast and burst style armor that you have.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, all right. So the other thing, when I started with swords in my stage combat group, I was young and quite poor, working minimum wage jobs and not getting 40 hours a week. You know the story. Yay, capitalism. Anyways, and so in order to like have a costume, I couldn't even buy like the cheapest Indian made costume.
Yeah.
It wasn't a choice for me. So I had to make my stuff. So I got into historical costuming at the same time I got into swords. And so I ended up, by the time I was done with that group, I was making everyone's costumes. And again, pushing as much towards history as I could. Like that was always my interest, was pushing towards realism. And such as it was in the end of the 90s, right? And but so with that, okay, so I'm gonna get into harness now. All right. So that means I'm making all my base layers. I'm making anything and everything I can, again, for the economics of the situation. And I had on Sword Forum, there had been a thread where Roland Varsica, way back in time, had gone with Hammerborg when he was still actively involved in the direction of that group to see the Waffenrock in Lübeck, Germany.
Yeah.
And he had taken some photos, and like Hammerborg had put those up. And that garment just buried its way in my mind. And I was like, I need to know how it's made. I need to know everything about it. And so it was actually my interest in that garment that went outwards towards my plate.
Oh, neat. That's a good way to start, because you're literally starting with the base layer and when working your way out as it should be. So I was going to ask how you came about building that suit. So, but sounds like you really jumped in both feet first into this when you first started and hit the ground running. But besides the lack of the 40-hour work week and the money to buy things, what was some of the challenges that you faced starting off getting into this?
Oh, well, I mean, the most obvious challenge was, I'm just going to focus on HEMA itself, right?
Yeah.
Or the approach of the historical fighting now. So, 2003, I was living in Topeka, Kansas, and I was the only person for 500 miles interested in what I was doing, right? In any given direction, right? There was no groups to join. There were no teachers to sign up under. So I basically, like I said, I went and took that one Christian Tobler seminar and had his book, which was Secrets, whatever the full title is. I can't even get it in my mind right now, but Secrets, which is Ringek, right? So I had that book. I had one weekend and I had stage combat, and I was like, I want to do this. So I need people to fence. I guess I'm teaching them, right? So, because I knew more than somebody who was picking up the sword the first time. So that was very challenging to basically have to create everything from the ground up, not exactly, because again, I did have a book and a seminar, but it was pretty close to, doing everything.
Secrets of German Medieval Swordsmanship.
Thank you, Andrew. I mean, I could have got up and grabbed the book. It's literally behind me, but so that was very challenging, right?
I know that feeling very well. Growing up in rural Maine,
yeah,
the closest local groups for anything really medieval for me, whether it be SCA or now HEMA groups have started to come in. There's one in Portland, which is 2 hours away, and there's one in Bangor, which is 2 hours away. And yeah, it is challenging to try to do it by yourself, but you took the different approach of actually, like you said, jumping in with both feet and starting something and watching it grow. So you've worked with Christian, you've got your armor on now, or you got the jack and you're working on the armor.
Yeah.
What came next? What was the next progression for that?
Oh, well, I mean, I think there isn't a next, right? It's always like kind of like this, right? You're kind of always like learning a thing and moving towards something, and then you're circling back and relearning, right? And that kind of happens. So, I was very interested. I had been studying judo for a number of years, and I was very interested in wrestling. That was always a core love of mine. So I had access to an early translation of the so-called Danzig manuscript, right, which Christian eventually did publish in St. George's name. But I had an early copy of that with Ott in it. And, I had asked Tobler, hey, Christian, do you have a interpretation for this wrestling? And he said, no, I'm not really a wrestler, but you are, so you should do it, right? And so, I was, I had this small fencing group I had started. We were meeting at the parks, right? We would meet sometimes at my judo club. We would rent out space there. And so we could have wrestling over the winter primarily, right? When we couldn't do swords outside. And like, you couldn't do swords on the judo mat, like.
Oh, that would be no.
Not okay. But yeah, and so there was always kind of this, move an interpretation forwards, and then, okay, let's now pick up our armor. Oh, there's some wrestling in here. How does that feel different? Oh, okay. And now let's go back to Blossfechten, and oh, there's wrestling in there. And then, right? Oh, let's pick up a dagger. Oh, wow, dagger's just wrestling with a dagger. Cool. Go back. Oh, armor. Look, we have to get him on the ground and dagger him. Oh, right. And so that's really my approach to all of this is, I mean, you said jumping in with 2 feet, but it's really like, what is the whole? What is the whole? Right. And So there's this sense of constantly expanding your knowledge until it collapses and becomes just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does make sense. It does make. I mean, someone can have a great deal of knowledge in one specific area of even just like one like Hema. They can have, they could be the most knowledgeable person in the world with longsword fighting. But if they're not taking it in the whole, do they actually understand what medieval fighting was in itself? Because all of these things, they affect one another. They don't happen in a vacuum themselves. I mean, Blossfetchen was in itself a way of, from what I understand, training out of armor, and then you get the armor on and it changes it. But it's yeah, it's understanding the whole is very, very important.
yeah.
So
I mean, everybody can make, I mean, I believe strongly that everyone's art lives in themselves. So everyone's able to make what they want out of it and get what they want out of it, right? It's like going to a yoga class. Yeah. You're going to explore ultimately yourself.
It's
right?
like yoga where you can stab people.
Yeah. Yeah. And then afterwards you hug them and then you have a little meditation session on what just happened, right? And maybe you internalize it. Yeah. So yes, like I don't really see it as a pejorative if someone specializes, right? I mean, that's what they want, and they're welcome to do that. It's just not interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. I do get that feeling. It's I've been accused of having historical ADHD, where it's basically it's like I'll be halfway done with something like this behind me, and I'll be like, oh, but 10th century Swiss are just fascinating. Let's go there now, and people are like, just finish what you're doing first. But it's like, no, it's we can't finish one thing first. We have to wrap it all together, and because that's what keeps us going, I guess.
Yeah.
So you've wrestled in armor, you fought in armor. Is there anything you haven't done in armor that you want to do next?
I haven't run a horse at anyone in armor yet.
I see that you've got the saddle and that you've been practicing on, right? The pommel.
Yeah. And I've been taking horsemanship lessons for a little over 2 years now, nice. Right? So I'm still a complete freaking horse noob, but I'm getting there, and my coach is awesome, and she's aware of my goals and is always pushing my learning towards that. So that's super cool. And I'm also doing some work with Jen Landels, who is up in near Vancouver, right? She's not actually in Vancouver, but and because she has a barn where she teaches mounted combat, has a whole club of mounted combat. So and a methodology for teaching people how to do it. So I'm working as a student of hers, as well as my local practice, obviously. So yeah,
it's really fantastic to see somebody who is themselves a teacher talk about still being a student of someone else, because we have to be if we want to teach. We constantly have to be learning and teaching, because it informs us and helps us grow as our own teachers to continue learning.
Yeah. And really, I mean, I think that there is always more to learn. And while, I can look to Jen and Christian Tobler as my teachers, there are many other people, I'm looking towards as maybe mentors, right? Because maybe there isn't an established formal relationship, right? So it's more loose. But yeah, Bob Charette, I'm always hitting him up questions about armor, etc., right? Because I mean, the man has 40 years in armor, 50 years in armor. I don't know, a lot of years, right?
He's that big gray beard. It's hard to, I don't actually know how old he is.
He is amazing. He is coming up on his 70th birthday pretty soon.
Is he really? Wow.
Yeah.
I hope I can keep doing this when I hit 70.
It's a goal. Yeah. It is a goal. Like I fought him on his 60th birthday in
Oh, wow.
armor. So yeah. So yeah, Bob's great. I look to him, lots and lots of other people, too many people
Oh, yeah.
to mention here. But additionally, right, we should be in a reciprocal relationship with our students.
Hmm.
We should be learning from them as much as we are teaching them. Because as they internalize their art, they're going to highlight pieces that we never could have seen on our own, right? If only because they have a different body.
That's a fantastic way. So talking about fighting Bob, are there people that you love to fight that it's like you just like get sort of I can't wait to fight them, or is that just everybody?
It might be a little bit everybody. Yeah, I really, really enjoy fencing my friends, right? It is such a good time. I think I've had some of my favorite fun fights with Reese Nelson. I'm sure you know him. I think he presented for you, right?
Last year, yes, and actually,
Yeah.
I replayed Ben and Reese's segment from last year yesterday because I didn't get I couldn't line up another speaker to fill it, but yeah, Reese is great. I love talking with Reese.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a lot of fun with Reese because typically when I'm fencing, I'm one of the smaller people on the field, right? If not the smallest, right? So typically I take what I would call a soft fight, right? I'm looking to maneuver a lot, maybe out cardio people, right? Maybe not be where their blow lands, right? If
Yep.
I can pull that off, right? Because it isn't a choice for me to go hard, right? Typically, unless I have the moment, right? And then, yeah, and then I'm going to drive with all my
Exactly.
right? But Reese is the same kind of fighter.
Yeah.
Right? That is his approach as well. So when I go to fence Reese, like it's just a different feel. And so I really, really enjoy just the different things that come up with that kind of soft encounter.
It's not to focus on Reese with him, but his thought process is completely different from a lot of other fighters because he can't, only having the one leg,
right?
He can't do a lot what some of the other fighters do, but it doesn't stop him. I mean, it doesn't really slow him down at all. He just it's I love listening to him and talking to him about how he thinks through the process of the fighting because you're right, it is that softer fight, waiting for the right moment to strike and things like that. So
yeah. So in short, to be effective against him, I have to take a harder fight.
Yeah.
But that also means I'm playing into the fight he's used to experiencing.
It does.
So maybe not the best choice. So it's fun. It's fun.
Is there anybody you haven't fought that you'd really love to?
Oh, so many people. Oh, well, you know what? I would like to fence Arnie Coates.
Oh,
that would be fun.
And then you can joust him after you've gotten on the horse.
Right?
Yeah.
Not my kid.
Joust first, and then if one of you gets knocked off, you can take it to foot combat.
There we go. Right? No, I'd have to borrow Kit to joust because my suit is not set up for that.
Yeah, no. I see your suit hanging back there. It is a fantastic, like I said, just a very distinct suit. There's so many suits out there, in reenactment and harness fetch and things like that where they're not, I don't want to say generic, but it's like they all sort of, none of them can stand out in a line, but you put your suit in a line and you know exactly who you are. You're just like, that's Jess. It's like, I see her, she's standing right there.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Do you like play into that? Does that build you up and pump you up when you're out there? Or? Does it not even enter your, does your,
It
no?
doesn't really enter my thoughts. No. Um, isn't that funny? I had not really thought of it that way. It is distinctive though, obviously. And, uh, at one point, when was this? Well, pre-pandemic. So I don't know, 2 years ago.
Timing.
There was, I had TQ here for an intensive. And so we fenced, we did lots of things. And he was asking about armored fighting because it was a little outside of his experience to date. And so I was like, well, you're not too far off my size. Let's put you in my suit. Like first I had him fence me while I was wearing it. And then I put him in it and then fenced him while he was wearing it, right? Because there was only the one suit here, but it was still, it was a thing to explore. And and then I took pictures because I was like, dude, can I take pictures of you in my harness? Right. And then I shared that. And so you can find all over the internet, people have posted that picture as me, but it's not me in my harness.
Oh, really?
It's T in my harness.
Huh. That's fantastic.
Right?
It is interesting how our harnesses sort of take on a persona of their own. I mean, they're attached to our names, but things like that happens where the or there's pictures of you if you. It's like I went to an SCA event a few years ago, one of my last fighting events, and I went into the melee, and I didn't want to wear this because this isn't fun for SCA melee. It's just you can't see, you can't breathe. So I borrowed a quote unquote Viking kit, basically. People took pictures of it and people posted pictures. Nobody had any. I remember walking across the field and one of my friends saw me and all of a sudden was like, "Oh, it's you." And I'm just like, "Yeah, it's me. I'm just wearing something different." It's like I said, it becomes like a signifier of us if it gets well known, but it also takes on its own sort of persona.
Yeah.
Off the field like that. So
yeah. I mean, it's so, that's one of the things I love about armored fighting is it so changes everything about how I hold myself, right? When I put it on. So there is a little bit, you had asked about change of attitude. It isn't because of my perception of how other people are perceiving me, really, but it's more that, well, I mean, my shoulders suddenly gain a masculine proportion to my body. All of these things, my weight shifts up, right? Which then means all of a sudden I'm walking in what I perceive to me to be a masculine fashion, right? I just get super butch and I'm like, yeah, let's do it, right? Which is not how I tend to hold myself for any other kind of fighting, but just because of the weight shifts and everything else. And I really, move, at least it feels to me, I move very differently and I carry myself very differently. Other people are like, no, it still looks like you walking across the field. But like, to me, that just the sense of weight and the way it just drops on me. Yeah, I love it.
There's a picture I love of me giving a talk at a school, and I'm standing there, and I'm wearing my male shirt, and I've got a breastplate on, and I've got my jupon on over that, and I'm doing something like this, talking about something. But I look at it, and I'm 6'1". I'm not overly huge. I'm not an overly muscular guy. And I look at that, I'm like, I'm jacked. Yeah, right? Look at me. It's like. So I fully understand that feeling of, yeah, and it does it does change the way you walk. I'm walking to the school and it's like ching, ching, ching. It's like Terminator coming through.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, I enjoyed that experience, right?
How does wearing the armor affect your wrestling?
Know that it does.
Okay.
That's a good question. I mean, obviously you have to be more cognizant of momentum, right? But I think that just makes the wrestling clearer to me. I don't know if that makes sense, right? Because if I'm out of armor and you, I don't know, shove a shoulder or whatever, like break my balance backwards, there's a lot of ways I can correct that are require very little correction. But in armor, if you get me going, my correction has to be bigger. Even if you got me going the same amount, just because of, again, inertia, right? And then there's, the little bit that it's harder to get people going, again, because of inertia, right? But yeah, I think it's the same. I think it's just clearer because it has it isn't bigger, but it has a feeling of being bigger. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That does make sense to me. Yeah, it's like it's you have to be more, like you said, more focused on not overcorrecting and knowing like just how much the resistance you need to have so you're not knocked backwards more or you're not overcorrecting and going too far forwards. I remember one of the first times I wore full plate in a tournament, I overcorrected and I stepped and I just face planted. Nobody even had to touch me. I just overcorrected too much and just went down straight.
Yeah.
So it does, you're right, you do have to be more cognizant, I guess, and clear to the moves.
Right. And I think one of my favorite stories of this, trying to explain the momentum thing or the inertia thing, is one of the first times I went out for a run in my harness. So I harnessed up, except for gauntlets and helmet, and went out into the woods behind my house in Georgia and was like, I'm going to go for a run on the trails in the woods because like this feels badass training, right? Why not? And so so the first time I went out, like I had fenced in harness, I don't know, a lot of times, and over a number of years, and like never lost my footing, never had any trouble like that. But running is such a habitual motion, and fencing is not habitual, right? I mean, eventually it becomes that, but not really, right? And so so I was out running and I wasn't lifting my legs as high as I thought I was. So I kept tripping, right? I kept tripping on roots, tripping on rocks, right? And because I'm running, I would trip and like face plant, right? Just down on my breastplate because there was no stopping if I tripped, and eventually, like on that run, I figured out landing on your breastplate and going down the hill like you're on a sled sucks. And it's way better to just throw yourself into a forward roll and pop back up. So that's what I ended up training on that run.
I had to learn doing that, running in the full harness. That if I fell, it sucked, but it didn't hurt as much as trying to stop myself.
Oh yeah, for real.
So it's trying to stop yourself is when you're gonna get hurt. If you just land and go boom, it's like you can sort of go and get back up and keep going. But it's the stopping yourself that hurts. So you have new people that must come to you all the time being a trainer. Where do you think is a good place to start for somebody that wants to get into stuff like this?
Oh yeah. So I mean, my thoughts are kind of always focused on the doing the thing aspect, as being the part that has typically, right, brought someone in. Typically someone who just wanted to collect armor, they don't need me, right? Somebody who wants to fence in armor finds me. So I focus on the fencing first, and the armor can come as it comes, right? And so, I mean, we just immediately, put on some gloves and grab a wooden sword because it's pretty friendly to like not having actual gauntlets, and just get going, understanding the principles of the fight, understanding the places you're going to move yourself, right? And understanding how to target.
Yeah.
Right. And and just get fencing, right? So, you know, a fencing jacket, a gorget, some sort of jacket and some gloves, and you can get going. And that's kind of my approach. And in fact, people that come for Blossfechten, like they end up doing armored warm-ups and they don't even know that's what they're learning. I don't belabor it to them, you know, I'm just like, here's a spear, let's go. We're warming up, right? And they're like, but I'm here for swords. I'm like, I know, we're just warming up, right? And I take them through these warm-ups with a spear or with a sword in held shortened or half sorting, right? That are going to build backwards into whatever we're going to be doing out of armor, right? And so, like, again, this holistic approach, I'm just always there, right? Always there. And that's just, you know, the way I do it. When we're able to have harness practices here, which is, you know, well, pandemic, again, it's been a thing. But, excuse me, you know, my kind of approach, what I like to do and suggest to people is to build kitting up into your physical practice, right?
Yeah.
So like, just throw on your legs and let's get going on our warm-ups and our drills with just legs on, and then drop your mail shirt on, and then let's keep going, and then let's drop the next piece on, and then let's keep going, right? And so your water breaks are you throw on the next piece, so that you're able to like build up the weight during your practice rather than being I don't know, I've been to a lot of practices where people fully kit up and then they walk out and then they're like, oh, and then your heart is like doing that thing. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know.
So
I was talking to some people yesterday where it's like there's times where I've taken my kit out and I just stand there looking at it. I'm like, I can't believe I put this on my body. You know?
Yeah, right.
But then you put it on, and you're like, okay, it's not that bad. Once it's on, it's not that bad. But so you've traveled a lot and been to a lot of events. Are there any events that you're looking forward to getting back to once this is all over and we get to do things again?
Once it's all over, yeah. Well, I mean, I love
Over.
WMAW. It's one of my favorites ever. That's in Racine, Wisconsin, and usually in September-ish. So, I mean, who knows now, but you know,
Nice.
That's that. So that's one of my favorite events because there's a ton of armor people there, and you can armor all day if you want. So that's pretty cool and fun. Oh man, so there's an event called the Paddy Korean, which is focused for like stage combatants and stunt people, but there's a lot of HEMA people there as well. I've been able to go to that once and taught harness there. And oh my God, that was such a good event. So I look forward to that one coming back too.
I'll have to start something up here in the Northeast and get a bunch of you get you to come up here and get a bunch of people up here to do it.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I'm gonna be doing some wrestling and harness up in Nova Scotia.
Oh, you'll fly right over me.
I know. I'm like, that's as close as I get, I think, for a while.
Well, I've been debating Ari Ryan, Eileen is trying to get me to come down and visit him. We do the How to Medieval podcast together. So
yeah.
He's been trying to get me out to Days of Nights, and he's been trying to get me down there to visit. So maybe I'll be able to get down there and see your studio one of these days.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, I went to Days and Nights once. It was a number of years ago. That would be cool to go back to too.
Yeah, they had a little scaled down this past year because of everything, but they said it looked so like a really nice event, and I would like to get out to it because Joe and Ian have put a lot of heart and a lot of work into that event, and it does look like a really, really cool event.
Yeah. There's going to be a chivalric fighting arts symposium here in Kansas, actually. Hopefully in May. Again, like it's theoretically happening at this point. We'll see.
Well, I'm going to open up because I'm sure people have tons of questions for you. So I'm going to open it
Awesome.
up, and if anything else pops into my head, I'll ask as well. So if anybody has any questions about anything, please feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat, and I can read it out.
Oh, I see one. Where in Georgia are you based? I am no longer in Georgia. I'm so sorry. I was in Canton. I was there for 5 years or so, but I am back in Kansas now. So I'm in Lawrence, Kansas, not far from Kansas City. So easy to get here.
Parker asks, he says he came up through ARMA. Do you ever have
Oh.
contact with John Clements while you were in Georgia? Or?
I did not have any interactions with John Clements when I was there, but yeah, he was, I mean, on the other quadrant of Atlanta. If you know Atlanta, you'll know we were both in Atlanta, and John's place is probably 2-hour drive from me. So yeah.
So let's see here. Andy Volpe is asking, says, of the common misconceptions and myths you get, what one do you enjoy dispelling? This is a 3-part question. What is the most difficult or complicated myth to address? And do you have any fun stories and interactions with kids or the general public?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with that last one. One of my favorites was going up to my kids' grade school to do a little presentation for their job fair in my harness, right? So I thought I would just really mess with the system as far as potential jobs you could grow up and do, and present that. But that was particularly enjoyable because my kid had been being bullied for a number of reasons, because bullies are jerks. But one of the things that they came after her about was that she had said her mom was a professional sword fighter, and none of the kids believed her and thought she was making stuff up.
Oh, no.
So it greatly pleased me to roll up with all my stuff and just look at those little children.
That's amazing. I not that I want my kids to get bullied, but I hope I can do that someday.
Right?
I have done a job fair. I got asked to do a job fair because I'm a director of a nonprofit. So they're like, "Oh, can you come in and talk about what that takes?" So I showed up wearing in my armor and stuff, and they're like, what are you? Thought you were talking about nonprofits. I'm like, yeah, I am. This is a nonprofit. So
right?
Messing with the system, right?
Right. Common misconceptions. Well, I mean, the obvious for me is many people don't think women get defense, right? Still, it's 2022, and here we are, right? But particularly armor. It people are very, very shocked to see me in harness. I know nobody actively in the community has any shock or surprise to see people of all genders involved. But I think the general public still doesn't really have a framework for that kind of representation. And so that's really something I enjoy being able to talk about, and to really address and go into. It's a complex subject, of course. Gender is a very complex subject because it's so deeply personal. But yeah, I think that's, lifting my visor, pulling my helmet off, right? That's pretty great.
We talked about, during the happy hour yesterday, we talked about women and women in armor, and how the idea of women's armor being inherently different is a very modern idea, because if you look, even going as far back, not even as far back, but like Joan of Arc, all of their contemporary depictions of her, she was just wearing armor. It was just like any armor that any of the French would have been wearing at the time. It wasn't different in any way, and there's that idea now that it has to be different because it's, it's like, not really. It doesn't at all.
Right. Yeah, obviously depictions of women in armor back in the day. Actually, Jessica gave a great talk about that. I think she mentioned that in the intro to her talk. Yeah.
She did, yeah.
I happened to see that one. It was really, really cool. But yeah, as a piece of that, my physicality lends itself to just using pretty much a medieval man's cut for most anything. I don't have to make major adjustments because I'm built pretty straight. But and so I've just done that because it worked, right? I didn't need to fiddle with anything. But I will say a couple of things. And one is that I am building a hoopalanda to throw on over my arming coat, like in place of the Waffenrock, right?
Oh, nice.
So that I have that option of rolling up like Eleanor of Aquitaine, right? But my Kostenbrust is just going to be strapped on the outside of this hoopalanda, right? So why not? I can have skirts, I can have like octopus wings and just roll up. I've fenced in skirts before, it doesn't faze me.
Man, we need to get somebody to do an image of you dressed as that, like an illustration, and put it on like a t-shirt that says "Rolling up like Eleanor of Aquitaine."
Let's get it done.
Yeah,
let's get it done. I love
something.
it.
Maybe we can convince. Didn't Charles Lynn did a image of you, right? Maybe we can. Maybe we can convince him to do it. Maybe because his.
we could probably throw in some dollars and talk him into it. Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. And then the other thing I would say is I am on the great quest to find an armor. If any of y'all are, I saw Jeff maybe joined if he's still on, right? But to find an armor who is willing to work on full legs and arms for somebody who has a very strong carrying angle, which I do, right? So off the shelf armor doesn't work for my arms at all, because when my arms straighten out, they're very bent. So if you don't know what a carrying angle is, definitely look it up. I mean, I could show the camera here, but it's more common for women to have a larger carrying angle than men. And so that's one of those things that like
Jeff's still on. He's still listening. So
well,
he's probably out there saying, "Send me an email."
Right? Yeah, right. I know. I need to actually, but that's something I've talked to a lot of women who fence in armor, and we run into trouble with that. And so that's part of the reason, like that. I mean, again, I chose like the German style with like all my crap pointed on because that was the style that went with the Waffenrock. But it's a style that doesn't get in the way of my arms. Right?
That actually is exactly the question I was asking yesterday at our happy hour, because it's those little details. My question that I was asking about changes in women's armor versus men wasn't stylistic. It's the little bitty details which we only notice. Like, for instance, I have a fairly decent background in life drawing, and as you know, women are a lot braver and much more willing to model for artists than most men. So I've noticed some little, very subtle changes. And as an armorer, that's the kind of thing that fascinates me. Just slight changes in ratio, the waist. It's the little tiny details that only an armorer or maybe an artist might pick up on, which is why I was excited to see that you were here. And I will tell you that I mentioned Elizabeth at Tilbury earlier. This is a subject that utterly fascinates me ever since I saw Kate Blanchett in the Elizabeth the Golden Age. And I really, really would like to see, or somehow put someone in armor. So I've been looking at you, Jess, and I've been thinking, wouldn't she look good in late 16th century armor on a horse?
Well, you know, my original year was 1568 that I was creating everything for, so it's not a hard sell.
All right. Now all we have to do is find a way that we're in the same part of the world at some point.
Exactly. Thanks, Fred.
Bryce wrote a question in the chat. He says, I follow your wrestling manual translations. Are you planning to publish any of those in book format, such as the von Bauman manuscript?
Oh, what? That is such a timely question. Thank you so much. Yes. So I have translated the von Bauman manuscript. It has gone through Christian Tobler revisions, and we are going to be filming all of the interpretive stuff for that this summer. And yes, hopefully Medieval Wrestling 2, tentative name, right? Medieval Wrestling 2, the von Bauman's edition, right? Is going to be coming out. I am hopeful for, I don't know if we'll make Christmas, but I am hopeful for first quarter next year that it'll be published. So yes, and if you want previews of all that on my Patreon, like people are getting that shoved in their face all the time. So if you don't want to wait for the book and you just want to get access to what I'm doing, building that book, as well as other projects I have, you can find me there. So, but yeah, that book is coming.
I think you just made Bryce's day.
So let me just say, y'all, von Bauman, which some of you may know as Wallerstein, the big old yellow book that was produced in 2002. That manuscript is by far the best wrestling treatise we have, hands down, no question. It has a very tight pedagogy. It is presented exceedingly logically. Like when you open up that original manuscript, the facing pages are the throw and the counter would be open in front of you, looking at you that way. It's that deliberate. And it's the only medieval wrestling treatise we have that has, well, not the only, but one of the only gigantic paragraphs, as well as pretty well rendered drawings, right? So like 1467 Thalhofer has way better drawings, but not full paragraphs describing what's happening, only a sentence, right? So yeah, if you're looking for early wrestling stuff, this is your thing. And I'm so excited about it. It's great. And there's stuff in there about taking prisoners in harness. That'll be in the book as well. It's not a lot, but you know, there's some funny things in there. Like this is how you hold these guys captive, like holding down 2 or 3 people. But then it says something like, it works better if you have friends with you. Yeah, it does. So.
Does anyone have another question for Jeff? No? Oh, no, all right. Well, so I have one last question for you then. Jessica Finley, HEMA instructor, wrestler, author, scholar. What is your favorite armor?
Oh, well, it's the Conrad Witz late-ish 15th century Kostenbrust set, right? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. If I had all of the monies that I would make Jeff make for me, would be that one.
Hear that, Jeff?
When I have all of the monies, Jeff, I'll call you. Don't hold your breath.
I think all of us have said that at one point in time. When we have all of the monies, we will call Jeff Watson.
Right?
Well, Jess Finley, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a delight to talk to you. It was fantastic to see somebody approach this with such energy and such holistic mindset towards the armor fighting and the wrestling and the medievalish of it, ness of it. So, um, for anyone who doesn't know and hasn't been following on my website, Jess has agreed to be part of our mobile museum exhibit once we can get pictures taken of her in her harness. So it's great to be able to work with her again doing this, and hopefully I'll be able to get somebody to either come take the pictures, or I'll be able to get down there myself and take the pictures of you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Matt.
You're very welcome. You have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll be back in about an hour, folks, at 1 o'clock. We're going to do some breakout sessions and just sort of talk to each other about stuff we've learned or discovered or liked about the conference. So we'll be back then.